Okay, new iWorld, new co-host. We're hoping Mr. Bit does come back at some point, but if not, we may start looking for a new third chair also. Actually, I didn't ask before the recording what I should be calling you on the recording.
Philip.
Okay, Philip. This is Philip. And Philip might want to lean back a little bit because the top in his head and his chin are getting cut off. Philip is actually joining us from, is it okay to say?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, he's joining us from the UK. Because of the current recording setup here, we can only have 3 people at a time. We're hoping Bit comes back, but if he doesn't, it would be nice to have actually 3 people in iWorld like all the other shows. And they're actually trying to figure out a way to add more people here. But anyways, we're not going to be trying too hard to keep to the 15-minute time limit in this iWorld, and hopefully that doesn't screw it up entirely, because I still don't know if the 15-minute time limit is actually removed from my YouTube. They tell me it is, but I haven't tested it yet. I cut the Linux we did last night up in a way that it's like it's 2 parts. It's 45 minutes, but it's 2 parts as kind of a test, and because that was just how the conversation went last night. I'm hoping that's true because it'll let me not spam YouTube with 50 billion things and make it easier for people to realize we actually are having whole conversations here that I don't know yet.
Well, not to mention that when they do come up in the profile, YouTube stacks them on top of one another.
Yeah, well, no, that's the thing. Well, and really, it would work out better all around, because like you were saying when you were when we were talking about you joining the content over here, it's hard for people who don't sit down and watch the 5, 6, 8 parts we do to realize we do actually cover the other points of view, even the ones we diametrically disagree with. But it's kind of hard to fit all of that into 15 minutes, especially given some of these topics. It's just, you can't do it.
Well, with any luck, hopefully that will work out.
Here's hoping. Let's see, where the heck do you... I guess we can start with the thing you were saying you were interested in. Like, you were wanting to talk about the iPhones and Verizon, even though you're in the UK and it doesn't really affect you too much. Lucky bastard if you're an Apple fan. I like it that way here because it means Apple has the dreaded AT&T, but that's going to go to an end soon anyways.
Yeah, no, I have to say, I think that personally, I think it's a good thing, because it just opens things up a bit more, to be honest. I mean, over here in the UK, all 5 major networks and some of the smaller ones have got it, so, and it's much easier and convenient too. So I think over in the States it should do well. I think, you know, I can't see why it wouldn't.
Because Apple signed an exclusivity contract with AT&T, and everybody in the States just got screwed. I don't even know if that exclusivity contract is in any way, shape, or form in effect, because that would be interesting, because it hasn't been 5 years yet.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because when I heard that it was 5 years, I was figuring that out, and like you say, it's still not there yet.
Yeah, it's still not there. I think what happened, because we've been wondering here in the States for about 18 months now, if that contract was even enforceable, because there was a big lawsuit brought up in reference to it. All the people who bought Gen 1 iPhones, the lawsuit was along the lines of they bought their phone and they're on a 2-year contract, but after the 2 years is up, they can't take their phone to any other carrier even if they unlock it, because partly hardware and partly the contract exclusivity thing. And I think the contract might have been voided, even though that lawsuit's still going on, and it's going to be interesting to see if AT&T sues Apple here sometime in the next 6 months.
Especially if they've broken their agreement.
Oh, yeah. I'm with you. I think ultimately this is a win-win for everybody, because, like you're saying, in your country and pretty much any other country than the United States, it's on all the carriers. And that's more competition, and whether you love or hate Apple, more competition is always a good thing. makes a better product for everybody. It makes Apple more accessible to everybody. And ultimately, I think it'll make all of Apple's competitors better too. So that's a win-win for everybody as far as I'm concerned.
Well, that's it. Like even from the point of view now, I mean, obviously Android's been upgrading their OS regularly, but obviously now they'll obviously hopefully step up their game even more than they already have.
I don't know how I haven't had personal experience with any of the Android phones across the pond, but personally here, Android's been making milestones of upgrades, but most of them in the States aren't making it directly to the end user because it's kind of one of those, well, we don't really have to compete with anything, because the ecosystem in the United States, and people abroad may be not too aware of this, it's if you want iOS, you go to AT&T. If you want Android, you go to Verizon. And it's like, and that's not just two cell phone companies competing against each other. That's two different cell phone technologies. That's CDMA versus GSM. That's limited data with caps versus unlimited data, but you can't use the voice at the same time. It really is. It's not even apples to apples or oranges to oranges. It's methodology X versus methodology Y. And the whole platform war thing just kind of gets, it's a byproduct, but it's not even really an issue when it comes to it. Whereas with y'all, I think all of Europe is actually GSM. There isn't even CDMA anywhere over there.
Yeah, no, that is the case. Yeah, from what I've heard when I've seen things.
Yeah, it's like so good or bad, right or wrong. It's not. Do you know if Europe's doing the same LTE technology?
As far as I know, I think as far as the UK at least, I think we've experimented a bit with 4G, as it's called, but I don't even know if we've decided what we're actually going for yet. But it's been if it has been experimented with, it's been very limited. So there's no definite thing like any providers are pushing forward or anything. So it's like we're miles behind the US as far as the next level of speed goes.
And this is why I don't like to call it 4G. Because it's like the marketing spin statewide is it's 4G, it's 4G, it's 4G. But the reality is it's competing technologies. It's WiMAX versus LTE versus, I forget the two other technologies. In the States, AT&T and Verizon went with LTE. They're both using the same technology for their 4G. But what I would love to see with 4G is we get rid of the problem we have with standard voice channels and 3G, and that is we're all on the same standard. This is the chipset, this is the standard, and that way the phones truly become international. Because I would love to be able to just hop on a plane or a boat, and when I get off the boat, as long as I upgraded my plan for the summer or whatever to an international plan, it's just gonna work. Not I have to go buy a whole nother technology because this continent's on this standard and this one's on this standard, and so on and so on and so forth.
I have to say as well, though, I mean, like I say, while I think it is a good idea, like that they've added another carrier to the iPhone, I do have to question though, will there be a big uptake on the one that's coming next month, because of the fact that people are saying, will there only be 4 months before they bring out a new one?
See, that is the other flip side of this, and that was one of the reasons I threw us in here, and this is why we're covering this in iWorld, because we're leaving the platform thing out of it, son. That is a question. And I mean, is there going to be an iPhone 5 in a few months, or is there just going to be an iOS upgrade and they're going to leave iPhone 5 off a year? And that's
one thing I
go ahead.
The one thing I'd speculate with was that I wonder if Apple, like, because of what happened at the beginning with the antenna, do you think they might have had added Verizon a 6 month earlier or so to try and make sure that the iPhone 4 isn't remembered for what it was being touted about at the start?
Here's one of the real reasons I think that Apple is adding Verizon, especially in the States. I don't know what your data packages are like over there. As I understand, it's pretty much, you're not having bandwidth caps. You've actually adopted, for the most part, tiered pricing for the data. Yeah, in the States, it's the iPhone is being severely handicapped from we're ignoring the whole closed versus open versus everything else thing, which is a whole debate in and of itself. But the iPhone, it pains me to say this, but this is definitely the form to say it in, is an okay device. I disagree with some of its philosophical things, and I disagree with some of the things Apple does as a company. That's my big gripe with it. But it's an okay device, and at the end of the day, I think it should be the end user's choice on whether they like it, what they do with it, so on and so forth. And due to AT&T, that is not the case in the States. AT&T has capped the bandwidth on all new iPhones at 2 GB, which is an insanely insulting small amount of data and bandwidth for a smartphone device. And I think it's one of those things that it's hard, even if you're grandfathered in the States, to buy an iPhone 4 without AT&T trying to figure out a way to ungrandfather you. So you don't want to buy it from AT&T. There's like a joke. People buy an iPhone 4, and then either because the AT&T network's overloaded or they don't have enough bandwidth on it, they go buy a Verizon MiFi, and they put that in their pocket, and that's what they use for the internet for their iPhone. So it's like, I have to get my internet from another cell phone company because of AT&T, and it's just one of those, really?
Well, I've got to say, one thing I do wonder about is that I think it was unfortunate for us over here, because it seemed that the main company that had the iPhone when it came out 4 years ago, they followed AT&T's lead, and they took off their unlimited a few days after AT&T done it over in the States.
No, and I'm glad I was scared to death when it was pretty much all but confirmed that the iPhone was going to be coming to Verizon, that Verizon would go, by the way, we're getting rid of our unlimited data plan too.
I think the fact that the phone can't be used outside the US and a few other things, I think they had to do something to give themselves a positive, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's CDMA, so it's database locked. So, yeah, it's like, even if you could jailbreak a CDMA iPhone, forget porting it to any other carrier. It's just not possible.
So, like you say, one thing that's taken out of that.
Yeah, and that's one of the contradictions in the technology, to be shocked. It's definitely going to be an interesting little up and down roller coaster over the next few months to see if it's not. I think they're going to sell like wildfire in February. They come out February 10th here. Love or hate, Apple's going to sell 1 million phones. Minimum. There's going to be 1 million CDMA. I'm going to say it right now. There's going to be 1 million Verizon CDMA iPhone 4s sold. Starting probably between February 3rd and February 10th. Because pre-sales start February 3rd, or supposedly on the shelf February 10th. My guess is whatever Verizon's initial stock is will never make it to the shelf. It'll be sold out in that week of pre-orders and yada yadas, and people will be going to the store to pick up their phone, and there won't be any available to sell. That's probably going to be at least 1 million units, maybe more. After that,
I've got to say, when a new iPhone is launched, I mean, it does seem that in general the carriers make a bit of a mess of it, because I know that when I went from one carrier to another, it was said that new people were supposed to be getting their phones first, even though we were all allowed to order at the same time. And there were some current people apparently who didn't get theirs for a good 2 weeks, and I actually got mine 24 hours after the day it launched.
Yeah,
and I moved up.
It's one of those things. It's always a mess, and that's the thing. But I'm sure they'll sell 1 million units. Now, like you say, it's going to take about 2 weeks for the aftermath of the launch to end, at which point, then, towards the end of February, beginning of March, will be the time to have a better idea of how this thing's really going to sell. Because there's going to be that mad rush, the I've got to have it, the it's new, the it's available over here. How much of that is going to be people who are just sick of AT&T illegally terminating their contracts, stiffing AT&T on the cancellation fee, and buying an iPhone on Verizon is anybody's guess. Which I can see that happening, because as long as they do it in this order, if they just stiff AT&T and they let it hit their credit report, Verizon will charge them like a $500 to $1,500 you have bad credit security fee. But if they pre-order it, set up the contract with Verizon, and then just go, okay, as soon as my Verizon phone shows here, I'm not paying the bill for my AT&T phone, and screw AT&T, I'm never paying them the $350 cancellation fee. They'll take a credit hit for 2 years, but there really isn't anything AT&T can do to make them pay that bill other than adversely affect their credit. And it would not surprise me, given the reputation AT&T is getting in some cities, if hordes of iPhone users just did that. It's even though it's in breach of their contract.
Yeah, I mean, the one rule that I've always played by is that when like a brand new device comes out, I never go for the very first one. And I know this isn't brand new, but in the sense of like what it's being run on, it is brand new. So I don't know whether it would be really a smart move to go straight for it, and whether it would be a wiser idea to wait.
Well, I personally, from a consumer point of view, if you want one of these, I think it'd be a good idea to wait, because there's a couple of things about the iPhone that are unknown at this time. And unknown variable one is the antenna problems or reception problems of an iPhone an Apple design flaw or the AT&T network, and or some weird combination of the two. And the reality is there's a plethora of theories on that, but nobody really knows. So this is going to be the beginnings of figuring that out. You know, all these people who are in these cities that their iPhones don't work, if they switch to Verizon, does it work now? Does it work flawlessly? Is there no antenna issues? Is there no reception issues? Is it that the AT&T network's overloaded here and the iPhone's fine? Is it an iPhone reception issue in which, because of and I'm not saying the antenna on the iPhones are like design flaws like the antenna gate thing with the iPhone 4, but maybe it's a weaker signal than some other designs might get, and you're in one of these cities where no matter what cell tower you're talking to, the reception just isn't optimal. So unless your device has perfect reception, it isn't going to work, because this is a real hit or miss variable thing that nobody really knows. And the reality is, until your neighbor who lives in the apartment or house next to you switches and gets the other one and is a guinea pig for you to know, okay, does this really fix the problem? You don't know. And
yeah, well,
go ahead.
That's the issue with it, obviously, is that, and that's that, like I say, because of the fact, well, I mean, look at like what happened with the iPad's Wi-Fi. That's why I would never buy a first device, because you never know if all the kinks have been worked out.
I'm usually with you on that. I'm willing to bet whatever kinks there are, because it's not an iPhone 5, it's an iPhone 4. And a little known fact is that since version 1 of the iPhone, Apple has been making CDMA iPhones. They just haven't been for sale. But Apple has been making them. They have been making a CDMA version of every GSM phone Apple has made. And like Steve Jobs has said more than once now, we have a Verizon tower on the Apple complex. This is one of those things I think has been planned from the get-go. So my honest guess is, for this iPhone 4, it's probably as vetted at this point as the GSM iPhone 4. So there's the in the field thing, which you should know 30 days after launch, when the initial reviews come out. You know, like people in Los Angeles are going to say, my Verizon iPhone works great. It's not any better than my AT&T one. It's like those, and you're going to know that at most 30 days, probably day of. The day somebody gets their first iPhone, it's like, it's either going to be, it works, or it's going to be, it didn't fix the problem, and now I have a 2-year contract.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, is this really a wise move for Apple to make? Because this is either going to make or break the iPhone. That's the thing. Because, like you say, all the things about AT&T network is the problem for the signal. That's going to be found out soon.
Well, we're going to find out whose fault it really lies with. And in that regard, it's one of those things, it was going to happen sooner or later. So if it is an iPhone design flaw, it could hurt Apple. But there's another variable to consider here, and this is more a PC v Mac thing. But there's a tipping point going on right now with iOS. And that Android's market share has been, oops, I should do it with the other hand, has been steadily doing this. And iOS's market share has steadily been doing this. So, and the reality is the two have come to a head, where they're both at about a fourth overall. iOS is in danger of falling below Android, and Android is in danger of overtaking, but they're right about equal right now. In the States, that competition has not been able to really happen because of what I was talking about with, you know, it's the carrier versus carrier, not really platform versus platform. Because it's at that tipping point right now, now is the perfect time, whether they're in breach of their AT&T contract or not, as a business move for Apple to go, we are on Verizon, this is no longer a carrier war, this is now a platform war. We think iOS is better, and we're going to launch it off with, like I said, they're all but guaranteed to sell at least 1 million units in February. Probably more. So there'll be an upsurge. They're overtaking that problem and getting rid of the carrier limitations in the United States, one of the larger markets for smartphones. You have to do that before you fall underneath that margin, because if they wait another year, they've fallen too far behind, and then they really can't make a gun. It'd be like, oh, you mean the phone nobody uses anymore is now available on another carrier? It wouldn't make sense at this point. Apple's not. From a competition standpoint, Apple. It looks like Apple might have learned the mistake they made with the Apple OS. They're like, no. We need to establish the platform as a standard and make sure it doesn't fall below leading margin. So now if they wait any longer, that point is past.
Yeah, I think that that's what I think. That's again, that was something else that from what I've been reading around and on the net, that's what some people have said, that this was the time that they really had almost no choice in the fact that, like you say, otherwise they could end up falling behind.
It's like right now they're about tied. Depending which metric you look at, Apple still has a 1 to 2% lead, or they have fallen behind by like 0.5%, and these metrics are very inexact. So in my eye, they're tied right now. They both have about the same size, and it's because of other things that are going on in the industry, it's kind of up in the air about which platform, whether iOS can turn it around and reestablish itself as an industry standard, or whether or not Android's going to be all phones will be Android and iOS will just be that other smartphone OS along with Windows Phone 7. It now is the time, though, to battle that. And I think ultimately, I'm glad Apple's doing that, because it's a win-win for the end user. And it's a good thing for all those iOS users who have all of this stuff invested in the iOS ecosystem. That there'll be some more longevity of it for them.
I mean, it does make you wonder as well. You just bringing up Windows Phone there. Is that another reason why Apple done it as well? Because they realised that one-on-one with Android they might be able to cope with, but having two against them was too much. So they had to get some way of getting close to being even by getting on another carrier.
I think it's also to be honest, I think personally, it's also some sour grapes about Phone 7. In that, if you'll notice, Verizon does not want Phone 7 devices. They don't have any. They don't really want any right now. But they'll welcome the iPhone. AT&T, on the other hand, the network that has iPhone exclusivity, just said, "Come over here, Phone 7. Sure, we want it." Like, you honestly think that there was nobody at Apple? Steve Jobs, probably one of them, was just like, "I'll show you, AT&T." It's like, I mean, just think about that for. You're gonna let Microsoft in here? Microsoft? We'll see about that. It's like.
I think I can see where you're coming from with that. No, like you say, because it is a bit ironic how, because that's what I did hear, that like you say, Verizon weren't having any. I mean, I wasn't sure if I heard that they were rumoured to maybe be releasing some this year, but maybe that's disappeared.
It's a up and down. The reality is, Phone 7 is a hard sell. Whether you think it's good or bad, it's just a hard sell. It's Microsoft, so there's this instant, it's Microsoft. I don't know about globally, but there's like this stigma in the US. The average user knows, I don't want to use IE. I want to use Safari or Firefox or Chrome.
Right.
I don't want to use IE. I know IE bad. Like the average end user knows IE equals bad. And what's sad about that is IE9 really is a good browser. But the average user knows Microsoft equals sucks. It's like partly in due to Apple.
Mind you, though, if you ask me, I think Microsoft have handicapped themselves a little bit on their phone because, well, another thing as well, people like myself that own PlayStation 3s and only PlayStation 3, the Xbox integration doesn't mean anything, so the odds of us switching from the iPhone, the only one we probably look at is Android.
Well, yeah, there's that, but I would argue Apple does just as many things, so I don't think that in itself is a deal breaker. It's just it's an ecosystem limitation. and iOS has plenty of those too.
Well, again, as I say, that's what it depends on, of course, is if you've got the thing that it's linked to. So, like, if you've got a Mac, say, then obviously the iOS is okay. So it depends if you've got the things they're offering already.
Nope, that really is what that comes down to. That's now, was there anything else we wanted to talk about on this, or do we want to move on?
No, I think we've pretty much...
yeah, I think we've actually covered this, and we're right about at a good time part, too.